Hi, my name is Elias Jade Not Afraid. I'm a 34-year-old member of the Apsalagan Nation. I am also a full-time self-taught beat artist. I am also an addict in recovery. Today I'm going to do something that I absolutely hate doing, and that's talking about myself. You see, as Apsalagat people, we're not supposed to boast or talk about ourselves or our achievements. We have our clan relatives to do that for us. But what I'm going to talk to you guys about today is something very important about myself, and that's how I was able to kick my addiction to opiates twice. With a strong will, self-determination, and rediscovering my culture and how it has played a role in my healing process and overcoming my addictions. Raise your hand if you know someone who is currently struggling with an addiction. Okay, about 80%. Raise your hand if you know what fentanyl is. Okay, about 90%. According to the US Drug Enforcement Administration, fentanyl is a synthetic opiate that is 100 times stronger than morphine, that with direct contact to the skin can cause a fatal overdose. It's an epidemic in the United States, it's an epidemic here in Montana, and it's an epidemic on our Indian reservations. When I was a teenager, I had surgery on my toe, which led me to being prescribed painkillers, which was the gateway to my future fentanyl addiction. I started abusing these drugs right away just because of the way they made me feel, the euphoria and just kind of feeling invincible. And so once I ran out of my prescription, I just started finding them off the street. And so my partner of 2 years found out that I was using and how bad my addiction was. And so we broke up. That day I used so much that I didn't even want to be here anymore. I just wanted to overdose and just be done with it. Just I was over it. But because of the high tolerance my body had to opiates, that didn't happen with the amount of drugs that I was taking. And when I realized that I was still here and still alive, I realized that I needed help. And so I reached out to a friend and was able to find a rehab center down in Casper, Wyoming. This facility, they medically assisted the detoxing process. And this facility, they used a medicine called buprenorphine with naloxone, which according to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Association is to help you get off opiates without the cravings, without severe withdrawal, and to help you prevent a relapse while on this medication. The doctor and the therapist there knew that I was a artist, and so they would ask me to draw something every day that just kind of represented how I was feeling, because at the time it just felt like the program wasn't really working for me. And so I would do this. I would draw something every day, bring it to them, and talk about it. But I also brought my beading supplies with me to this facility just so I could bead on my downtime. I learned to bead when I was 12 years old by trial and error. I didn't have family to show me. They didn't have time to show me. I think just because I was so young, they didn't take me serious. But I didn't let that stop me, so I just learned to do other various beading techniques along the way, just as a side hustle to, kind of get me through. And so I incorporated beading into my daily routine by creating art on a day-to-day process, because to me it just felt like it was better than any meeting that I had or any counseling session, because it was just me and my thoughts. After doing 1 year of going back and forth from Lodge Grass to Casper, Wyoming, and paying out of pocket for each doctor visit, counseling, and medicine, I relapsed after 1 year. And so I thought a change of scenery would help me. And so after meeting someone from Arizona, I decided to spontaneously just move to Arizona. But when I moved down to Arizona, I had stopped taking everything. I just quit cold turkey. I didn't get any medically assisted detoxing. I just stopped everything I was doing, and I just suffered for a couple months. I started to bead again full time around this time in 2015. So I applied for the Santa Fe Indian Art Market, and from there really is when my beating just started being recognized. But even though I was experiencing all the success, I was still not doing well. And so on February 3rd, 2018 was a day that just changed my life forever. I went from doing all these collaborations, all these different podcasts and stuff, markets, to spending months and months at the hospital bedside to my partner who was hospitalized. And during this time, while he was in the hospital, his mother passed away. Or the night that she passed, I relapsed. From what I was witnessing, I just couldn't deal with it. And I was so mad at myself for falling back into this trap of addiction. And so while I was at this hospital, I needed something to keep me busy and preoccupied while I was there. And the only thing I could think of was to bead while I was there. And so I didn't drop out of the art market that year. And so while I was at the nursing rehab with my partner, I would sit there and create a collection of various beaded items and enter them for my art market in Santa Fe. I also created this a large beaded purse and entered this into for competition, and I named it the spiked tulip bag. And so after I entered it in, I took first place. And what is really cool is that it was later added to the permanent collections of the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. Oh, thank you. As of last week, it was installed and is now on the 4th floor for viewing in the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. During the time I was at this market, the nursing rehab facility, they discharged and sent my partner home. So, like, raise your hand if any of you here had to do caregiving for a loved one. Okay, about 80%. It is very, very hard work. Right after he got out of the hospital, I ended up being his caregiver and being a full-time artist and then being a full-time caregiver. It started to be very hard and it was very stressful. One night I went for a drive around the reservation there, and I was contemplating taking my own life because here I was doing all this backbreaking work, and it just felt like nobody cared. Nobody was like checking on me. And I was just letting all this get to me. And so while driving around, I just kept, contemplating that going through my mind, like, just give up. You don't have to be here. You don't have to suffer through this. But I just had that voice in the back of my head that just kept saying, like, keep going and just get through today and deal with it tomorrow. So I ended up going back home that night and giving my partner the nighttime medication before I went to bed. But when I was asleep, something woke me up out of a deep sleep. Something came over me and I just felt like I had to go and check on him. And so, because you see, he would tend to fall asleep on the couch in the living room while he would watch TV late at night. And so I ran in there to go check on him to just see if he was okay. To me, it looked like he was sleeping, but when I got closer, he was making these gurgling and gasping noises and was trying to wake him up, but he wasn't waking up. And so I picked him up, put him on the ground, and was going to start doing CPR until I started hearing him gasp for air. And so to me, it looked like an opiate overdose. So I had Narcan that I would carry with me in my backpack just in case I ever overdosed. And so I administered Narcan to him on the ground, and after a couple seconds, he woke right up and didn't know what was going on. So just to be safe, we went to the ER just to make sure everything was okay. But once we left that hospital, I was just in a lot of shock, and I was just still trying to take in what all happened because that could have been me so many other times. So, after the overdose incident, I decided to challenge myself on a large beating project, something to help me process what was all going on at the time, everything that I was witnessing within these short amount of years. And so after this overdose incident with my partner, I found another caregiver to take over so I can start taking care of myself. I got into an outpatient rehab program that um, helped me get off of the fentanyl and detox. And so once I got off that, I started working on this cradle board, this project that I was working on. I designed a full-size cradle board, got the design ready, put it on my smoked deer hide, and just slowly started working on it. But while I was working on it, I was using it to help me just process everything that was going on. And so, let's see, here we go. I created a full-size Upsalaga beaded cradle board, and I worked on this throughout 2020, throughout 2021, and finished it just in time for the 2022 Herd Art Market in Phoenix, Arizona. This is a full-size, fully functional Upsalaga style cradle board. The beadwork is done on smoked deer hide with a mix of vintage and antique glass faceted seed beads. I used 100 pair of bull elk ivory on this board. That's 200 individual elk ivory. And that came from 100 head of elk. One elk only has a set of ivories, so I only have two. But I didn't hunt these elk, I just hunted them off eBay. And so I used hardwood for the backboard and covered that in smoked elk hide and added the ermine tassels onto the bottom of the beadwork there. And so I entered this in for competition at the Herd Art Market, and it won best in division, best in class, and it also took first place. Thank you. And so what was really crazy about this is after I found out about the awards, I went for a drive around Phoenix, just for old time's sake, when I was living there. And I get a call on my phone from a lady and asked about this cradle board. And so she was like, is the cradle board available? And can you tell me a little bit more about it? And so I was like, all right. So yes, the cradle board is still available. I said the flowers, they represent the renewal of life, and the skull at the bottom represents death, and how decomposition and decay is essential for recycling nutrients and returning them to the soil to help these flowers grow. As Crow people, before pre-colonization, when we would go hunting for an animal, we would recycle and reuse every part of that animal, and we would use from the fur to the bone for survival. And for Crow people, we use elk teeth on our clothing and for jewelry, but I wanted to do something different, and I added the elk teeth onto the cradle board where it holds the baby, and on the bottom of the board, and outlined it in beadwork. When you take a step back and look at it from a different point of view, this board is covered in hundreds of deaths, but all this death protects and adorns new life. So she said, great. If it's available by the time we get the approval from the board and from the director, we'll be reaching out and letting you know if we pass or if we add it to our permanent collection. So just keep an eye out for an email or a phone call in the next couple of weeks. And so I was like, all right. And so I didn't even make it back to our Airbnb that night before I got another call back from the same lady. And she told me that the board approved, every one of them did, and including their director, and that they were going to go ahead and go forth with adding this cradle board to the permanent collections of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. Thank you. And so she asked me, "What did you name this piece?" And I named it Life After Death. And so this is the cradle board installed at the Metropolitan Museum. It's in the Native American wing. Addiction can be very hard to kick, especially opiates. A lot of times it's hard to speak to loved ones who are struggling with addiction and to offer them help. You might find yourself in a situation where you're dealing with an addiction and you might feel like there's no hope and that there's no help out there, and might feel like a lost cause, like how I did. But I'm standing here today as living proof that self-determination, a strong will, and the willpower and having the will and the want to change is possible, but you just have to do the work. It's never too late to reconnect to your heritage or your culture, or to even learn a new hobby or a new skill. You never know where it will take you. You never know what you'll create. When the programs weren't working for me, I reconnected to my Apsalaga heritage and incorporated the art therapy into my daily routine to help me get over my addictions, and my life has just never been the same. Thank you.